My name is Ali Jazairi, and I am the senior counselor at the World Intellectual Property Organization in Innovation and Technology sector. And I came here to discuss new trends in intellectual property within this Open Innovation 2.0 conference.
And what are the new trends in intellectual property?
Well, intellectual property has to evolve as much as innovation itself evolved. Over the last few decades, innovation has evolved from the Thomas Edisons of the world, that were you had the innovators working individually in research labs, and towards the end of the 20th century, you had large research corporations doing R&D, and towards the beginning of 21st century, you have now networked innovation, where people are connecting through networks of teams, and so in the same way, intellectual property has evolved over the last 100 years since the Paris Convention in 1883. Intellectual property was mostly about building fences and up to the granting of an IP title. And over the last 30 years, I would say that today IP is focusing on what happens after the IP grant, IP title grant. So what you do with it, through IP licensing, cross licensing, creating patent pools, and so on. So today, open innovation is certainly a new phenomenon that's happening, and you have changing paradigms of innovation. In the same time, also intellectual property IP itself is evolving, and it's important to realize that IP is evolving from intellectual property to intellectual partnership today, because IP itself becomes a currency for open innovation.
And we know that people on the ground level, some are calling out for a change in IP, but is there also some resistance to this more open environment?
Well, I think that most forms of open innovation are consistent with intellectual property, and I think enforcement of intellectual property in a way, and even IP itself has to evolve to other forms of light tools, soft law, all of these new types of thinkings behind intellectual property have to be looked at and seriously analyzed to see their adaptability in today's era.
And what kind of an impact can open innovation have on developing countries?
I think it's a huge opportunity. Bruno Lanvin, who is the director of the business management group at INSEAD, had said recently that between 2020 and 2030, most of the innovating countries will be from Africa and the Arab world, and that is quite surprising. Probably, I think what is a distinguishing factor for countries like in Africa and the Arab world is that they might be bringing new applications that people in developed countries won't think about. Some examples you can already see. Already in Kenya, you have a few innovations that are being sold in many other countries, including United States. For example, Ushahidi is a platform that allows to do geomapping of events through SMS messaging from a cell phone. So, for example, this was used in the first in Kenya elections and there were some demonstrations and things like this. So oftentimes by receiving in a central hub these SMS messages, you can do a geographic mapping of where a particular event is happening. What is interesting is that this application has found solutions in, for example, Washington, D.C. for snowfalls, where you had the roadblocks that were happening, and you have real-time mapping of these kinds of events. So this is an example of reverse technology transfer or reverse innovation, where you have some of these innovations that are developed in developing countries that can find markets in developed countries. And this has to do also with frugal innovation, because oftentimes today you need to have very low cost solutions. So I would say that in the future you would see more and more of these types of solutions that oftentimes need a lot of cross-disciplinarity, which is very important because, as we said in the conference itself, humanities, art, cinema have a lot to say and to bring insights to innovation. And I think innovation is not only revolving on technology, but it also includes the arts, which I think is an important factor. One example, and I will conclude with that, is Anatsui, who is an artist from Nigeria, who has used a very innovative way of doing his art, just using bottle caps and just connecting these bottle caps to make very nice paintings out of this. And in fact, his paintings now are exhibited in MoMA in the United States, and he's becoming very famous, not only because of his innovative way of using art, but also because of the ecological aspects of recycling and all of these things. So I think the Bruno Lanvin vision for the next few decades and the most innovative countries will certainly probably get realized.